for joining us. Jess asked me to address a few housekeeping items. If you're virtual, would you please
mute yourself.
Yeah, mute yourself, and then also turn off your cameras. Could they put bags over there? So I'll give you a moment to do that. Where are we at?
We're good.
Also, please hold your questions till the end. We should have note cards and pencils for people to I guess. And if you're joining us virtually, will you please go to the chat room and put in your questions, and we'll answer them after the presentations. Now I'd like to thank our sponsors. We have the Rodale Institute, and there's a lot of information in the back about the Rodale Institute, and we will get two presenters here today are from the Rodale Institute, and we'll get to them later. Also, we have Seaquist Orchards, and thank you guys for bringing the cherry tart. That was wonderful. We have who else do we have? We have Grains and Greens. We have the Climate Change Coalition of Door County. We have the Get Real Cafe and Econo Foods. So after the program, we will have additional stacks, so please join us for that. So getting started, the village has been a legacy green tier community since 2017. So in addition to the numerous environmental improvements, and we'll be dealing with that in length, and Angela Lynch will be talking to you about that and introducing the presenters. There are so in addition to the improvements that have occurred in the 5-year span since 2017, there are some real world financial benefits that come with being a green community. When the village undertook a wastewater treatment plant upgrade several years ago and applied for a Clean Water Fund grant, the village was the only community in the state of Wisconsin, and there were some 45 communities that received loan money to build new recycling plants and water upgrades for a total of approximately $500 million. We were the only community in all 45 that received green tier money in the amount of $30,000. And I was extremely happy about that. Additionally, the grants we received for solar array, Church Street project, which is right out there, that's being improved. Our Highway 42 project, which is coming up, are awarded on a point system. And I have no doubt being a green player plays into the success we have had with procuring grants. So, as Kermit the Frog says, it pays to be green. I'll now turn it over to Angela Lynch.
Thank you, John, and thank you for all of those joining us both virtually and in person today. We have found that more than anything, the most important element to making all of our green tier dreams come true is our community. In the village, we have been fortunate to have a green tier task force, which consists of 15 community members and village staff who have been helping us make things happen. I'd like to make a special shout out to one of our task force members, Mary Riley, who played a major role in making this all happen today. She's not able to be here in person, but her efforts and dedication to sustainability are. So thank you, Mary. I know she's watching online, I think. For those who aren't familiar with Green Tier, the Green Tier program is a Wisconsin DNR program that communities commit to through an annual evaluation process. The green tier goals fall in 7 categories that we use to categorize our annual goals. It's a detailed way to implement sustainable and smart maintenance and growth to our beautiful village. I see it kind of as an umbrella. So I think health is the most important category of green tier. And I see that as like the canvas of the umbrella. And then all of the spokes of the umbrella are like transportation, land use, energy, water, sewer, waste. And then the handle of the umbrella is our wonderful community. So health plays a role into all the major categories. Just like today's title for the event, Healthy Soil, Healthy Food, Healthy People. Today's program is in line with our healthy land use category and is part of one of the village's primary goals to be toxic chemical free, I got ahead of myself, by 2023 on our public lands. This includes our parks, lands, and the orchard that the village owns and leases to Seaquist Orchard. We are approaching the toxic chemical free initiative in many ways. One is with a grant we received from an organization called Beyond Pesticides, and they are training our parks and public works staff to maintain organic lawn care practices. And also we are doing an educational program with our community on ways to feed pollinators with their lawns as part of our No Mow May initiative. You can pick up one of these lovely little flyers that are on that table over there with a list of some of the other events we have coming up this spring. Lots of things happening this spring in the village. So that brings me to the reason we are all here today. We are honored and humbled. Our partner, Seaquist, has agreed to collaborate with the talented folks at Rhodell on alternative land care practices on their orchard that is surrounded by our public facilities. And with that, I would like to introduce Nathanael and Leah, our organic consultants from Rodale Institute.
My name's Nathanael. I'm a 5th generation farmer from California. My grandfather was actually from the southern Canada, I guess, Saskatchewan, so I feel like maybe I'm kind of getting closer to my roots being up here, but it's been beautiful here. It's been a wonderful week that I've had in Wisconsin, and it's great to see precipitation in the form. It's been hot and dry in California, and this feels really good to me right now, so good for my soul. But anyway, I've been with the Rodale Institute for about 2 years now, starting as the farm manager at the Regional Resource Center that they opened in California. Later we'll be talking more about what Rodale's roots are, but recently they opened up a Regional Resource Center in California that I was running there, and then moved over to the consulting wing about a year ago. So that's me. I'll be talking about you.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Vereecke, and I'm also an organic crop consultant who's at Rodale Institute. I think you probably hear that I have an accent. I was born and raised in France, so I'm not a native from here. I don't think I'm getting any closer from home from being here from Madison. If you don't understand anything I say, don't be shy and ask me to repeat. I will not be offended. And yeah, so I came to the U.S., to Madison in particular, to work with a professor at the University of Wisconsin-Madison. Her name is Dr. Erin Silva, and she does research in organic and sustainable agriculture. So I conducted the research there at the Arlington Research Station. We have the superintendent of the research station is certainly here in the room too. So yeah, I was with UW-Madison for 4 or 5 years before transitioning to my current role at Rhodell a little over a year ago. Yeah, that's about me. I will be covering what is Rhodell, what is the consulting services, what is organic, what are pesticides, and what are the impacts of pesticides can have on us, and then Nathanael will talk more precisely about organic fruit production. So what is organic? I'm going to do a little bit of reading. So organic is the production of crops in a system that relies on ecosystem management rather than external agricultural inputs. The term organic is protected and regulated by the USDA, certified organic operation, or inspected on an annual basis. In general, organic agriculture prohibits the use of synthetic fertilizers, herbicides, and genetically engineered seeds. Many commercial fungicides and insecticides are also prohibited. The National Organic Program, NOP, maintains a national list of allowed and prohibited substances. I wanted to put it out there because I feel like more and more there is confusion about the organic label and what is it and what is the integrity of the organic label. Does it still have the integrity it had like 10 years ago? It's fairly recent, I think, started in the 80s, 70s, that it became part of USDA. So again, it's regulated by the USDA, so it's a legitimate label. And I would encourage you to keep your trust and interest in the organic label because we need to stand behind it if we want it to stay out there and have farmers transition to organic. I also wanted to go over the certification mechanisms. Who here is a grower? If you can raise your hand if you're growing any sort of crop. Okay, so commercially, or is it homeowner, grower, the people who raise their hand? Okay, so we have a fair bit of growers. So again, the USDA defines the rules and organizes the standard, the National Organic Program. And the way it works is that, there are like sets of rules that farmers have to follow. And there are agencies, accredited certified agents or certifying bodies who go on farms. They send inspectors on farms to look at their practices. So they go to farms and processors. You can be certified organic for livestock, for crop, or for handling. So just transforming a product, you still have to certify your operation. So those inspectors are sent there, they write a report, and the inspectors and the people who actually review the report are two different people. So that's where like there is no bias. The person who is reading the report is not the person who met the grower. So there can't be any kind of friendship happening between the inspector and the grower that will have no impact. There is again a report, several categories that the inspector has to assess on the farm, send back to the certifying body, and then they assess whether or not the farm can be organic. The organic transition takes 3 years, so between the last application of a prohibited substance and the time when you can actually sell a product with the label organic on it, you have to wait 3 years. So what are the different, and Nathanael will go in much more details in the fruit crop production aspect of that. What are the different practices? What makes organic different than conventional? And I think that's really important for us as consumers as well, to understand what the differences are and where we're paying a higher price tag on organic. So organic farmers need to find alternative ways to control weeds and pests. Those alternative ways include cultivation, crop rotation, cover cropping. They also have to find alternative ways to manage fertility. They cannot use industrial fertilizers, so they use animal inputs, compost, legume cover crops. And again, so they cannot use synthetic fertilizer or herbicides, which are a big part of agriculture. In order to deal with pests and disease control, most of the growers in conventional systems will use pesticides. In order to deal with fertility, they will use chemical fertilizer. Organic growers cannot do that, which makes organic farming a lot more complicated and can be a little less productive per acre, but also is much more labor intensive. A lot of things will have to be done by hand. If I think about fruit crop production in particular, if we think about crop production, it will be basically more time with the tractor. So it's more time consuming, and it's kind of where the higher price tag comes in. The yields are a little lower, and you have to hire a lot more people, which is great. Bringing more people to the farm, having thriving communities, I think is a great thing. Now going a little bit into Rhodell and our relationship to organic. So Rhodell is a nonprofit that was started in Custom, Pennsylvania, that's southeastern Pennsylvania, by a family, the Rhodell family. It started in 1940, so they had a research farm there in Pennsylvania. They've been in organic and doing research and education in organic for a very long time. They used to have a publishing company, so maybe a lot of you know the Organic Gardener, which was a magazine that was very popular. They no longer have the publishing company. No, we're just a nonprofit with different departments within it. And our mission is to assist farmers in successfully transitioning to organic, to conduct research on organic farming methods and their impact on the environment and the people, to educate consumers on the benefits of organic for people and the planet. So it has different axes, so the consumer education, farmer education, and the research part, and how we put it all together and bring the information to the people who need or want it. Since then, those new regional resource centers have opened within the past, I would say, 3 to 5 years. So we now have research going on much closer to here in Iowa, in Marion, Iowa, which is a little north of Cedar Rapids. We have a research center in California, as Nathanael mentioned. We also have a research center in Georgia, and again, the main campus in Pennsylvania. So there was, agriculture is different depending on the region. The pest, disease, climate, everything is different, so the research is very important to bring it closer to the farmers to make it more relevant to their operations. This is focused on our long-term cropping system trial at the Rodale Institute in Pennsylvania. There is a 40-year-old, I think they celebrated their 40-year anniversary last year. It's a trial that compares organic and conventional practices side by side in the same field and has been doing that for 40 years. So there is a lot of data that has been generated from that. This is mostly row crop production, so corn, soybeans, wheat, alfalfa, with cover crops, with manure, without manure. You can find a lot of information on that on the website if you're interested, but mainly those are the highlights of the research. So organic systems are competitive with conventional yields after a 5-year transition period. So the transition period is very critical for the growers, and that's what we really work on as consultants. Those are the 3 years when you're growing a crop with organic methods, but you're selling it at a conventional price. So it can be really driving for a farmer to do it and very intimidating, and that's why a lot of growers don't even want to consider it because they think, what am I going to do for the 3 years, and how is the paperwork going to be? So those are the main reasons why growers are intimidated by the transition to organic. It can produce yield up to 40% higher in times of drought. That has also been observed in other regions. I know that there is also a similar system that is at the Arlington Agricultural Research Station here in Wisconsin that has showed that in drought years, the organic system perform better, so that they're actually more resilient to different types of climate. And all of the other things, I don't need to go through all of it. 45% less energy, less carbon emission, and so on. I would invite you to look into it, and they will release the 40-year report sometime soon. It takes a while to produce such a report, I'm sure, but it will be available eventually. So the consulting services actually started 3 years ago, and I think one thing that's very interesting and something that you may want to know if you want to advocate in Wisconsin for agriculture and sustainable agriculture. So the state of Pennsylvania has their own farm bill. And I believe it's the only state in the US that has their own farm bill. And through the Pennsylvania Farm Bill, they decided to fund the consulting services of the Rodale Institute. So they decided to pay people to go and help farmers transition their operation to organic at no cost to the grower, which is absolutely amazing. That started 3 years ago. We have now 4 colleagues who work in Pennsylvania as growers there. And again, Nathanael and myself are consultants as well, and we always try to find funding so the price burden is not on the farmers because we don't believe the growers should pay for these services. Extension service exists for a reason to help growers change their practices, but there is no such information in extension at this point on the organic aspect of it. So our mission is again to provide technical assistance to farmers. Since it started in Pennsylvania, I guess over the last year, we have now consultants in 10 different states. So we have people in New Mexico, New York, California, Georgia, Minnesota, Wisconsin. We're trying to go everywhere where we feel like there is funding and there is a demand to go and help farmers in those areas. So myself, I work in the Midwest with farmers because I'm kind of the only one in that region of the Midwest. I work with growers in Michigan, Ohio, Indiana, Illinois, Missouri, Iowa, and Wisconsin. So if you know a grower who is interested in transition to organic, just send it my way. This is the list of services that we offer to growers. Not a ton of farmers here, but I can roughly go through it. We do on-farm consultation. It's very important for us to go and meet the grower on their operation to see how the landscape looks like, what equipment they have, and just establish an interpersonal relationship with them so they feel comfortable with us. We do everything, weed management is very important in organic, and it can be a tricky part for someone who's transitioning. We try to help them envision the financial aspect, again, of that transition where they're not really paid the organic price, but they're using organic practices. So we really do anything that is related to the organic transition. So regenerative is a word that's being used more and more in very different contexts. I feel like it's getting to be the buzzword in agriculture. Everything has to be regenerative, and farming regeneratively. There is no real definition behind that word in most cases, but there is actually a label that's called Regenerative Organic Certification. It goes beyond organic, but it's an add-on to organic. A farmer who wants to seek that certification has to be organic in the first place. It just goes beyond it in some aspect. So there is some criticism that organic does not go far enough in some aspects, and people complain that the food that's organic is not really organic. There are legitimate concerns that have been highlighted by a lot of people in the organic sector, and that's where that label came from. So the organic label, some people don't believe it goes far enough in soil health, animal welfare, and social fairness is not at all part of the organic label. So that regenerative organic certified label, again, goes beyond on those three aspects of agriculture, which is, I think, a big step in the right direction. It came from industry. Organic certification came from farmers. So it was led by a group, it was a grassroots movement led by farmers. This one is coming from industry, so the dynamics are a little different. There are not so many rock certified products on the shelves yet. I kind of realized by accident that I had one in my house. So Dr. Bronner has rock coconut, not milk, coconut oil. And I think that's the only thing that I found in the store, but I think they will be coming because there is a large interest in the industry in getting farmers to these standards, which also brings some issues, but I'm not going to go too far into it. If you want more information, we just started offering being a regenerative consumer class on our website. So we have a virtual campus that has a bunch of different classes. Most of them are more for growers. There is like a beekeeper class, and most of them you have to pay for. This one is free. So if you want to check it out and see how to be a regenerative consumer, just go for it. I haven't checked it out myself. I hope I will have time to do that eventually. We also have a transition to certified organic agriculture. This one is I think $300, but if you are interested in looking at it and you are a grower, just reach out to me and we can give you a code to have it for free. Changing topic a little bit here. So why are we even doing organic? We went through all the differences between organic and conventional. One of the main ones being that organic growers cannot use synthetic inputs, including synthetic pesticides. And I just wanted to clarify what pesticides are because there's a little bit of confusion in it. I feel even in the field of agriculture, people use the word pesticide, herbicide, insecticide interchangeably, but they're actually not interchangeable. So pesticide is any substance or mixture of substance intended for preventing, destroying, repelling, or mitigating any pest. And weeds are also considered pests. So pests are like insect diseases and weeds. And it's an umbrella term for those other terms. So an herbicide is a pesticide, an insecticide is a pesticide, and a fungicide is a pesticide. So just straightening the terms here. And I'm going to go over the next few slides on what is the impact of pesticide. And here I just wanted to take a step back, and if you want to assess, if you're like a concerned scientist, or a concerned citizen, or a concerned scientist too, and want to kind of look into your community and what you should be concerned about, what you should be looking into, looking at what agriculture looks like in your region is the first step, because the pesticides used in those different systems are going to be widely different, and their different impact on the environment and human health are assessed or not. So I think the first step is, what do we have here? So in York County, we actually have a lot of forage, soybean, corn for silage, and wheat for grain. So we have a lot of dairy systems here. That's why there is forage and corn for silage, because this is going to feed the cows, the dairy cows. As a consumer, I think it's important, if you want to have conversation in your community about pesticide, to be well informed and to know where your information comes from, to know that it's backed by research and that it's actually legitimate information. People using information that comes from nowhere and having conversation with growers about it just never goes really well. Everyone has to have a solid argument on each side, and I encourage you to document yourself. So the PAN, Pesticide Action Network of North America, is a really good resource. They have a lot of resources on their website, a lot of research on all the different impacts and different uses of pesticides in North America. Those are the three main topics that they cover. And here I really wanted to point out the pesticide treadmill. So this is kind of a way of thinking of why did conventional growers arrive there in the first place. And there is one thing that I really don't like, is blaming farmers. This is something that I just don't like to see, because they got there for a reason, and it's oftentimes, most of the time actually, not their own fault. They were put on that treadmill, and now they just can't get off of it. Once you start using chemical fertilizer and pesticides in general, it's really hard to get out of it. And the chemical industry is actually a really big player in making them do what they're doing. So again, be nice when you talk to growers around you. It's nice to be an advocate for organic agriculture, but just be mindful that this is their business, this is their livelihood, and they don't intend to do bad things. They're doing it themselves, and they're the first ones to be exposed to these chemicals. So think about them as well when you think about all of this. A lot of other information on the website, won't go into many details. I just wanted to show a couple of studies and think about what do we know about the impact of pesticides on human health and environmental health. So I just pulled out one study here on pesticides in the environment. It's on arthropod communities, so the soil contains an abundance of biologically diverse organisms that perform many important functions, such as nutrient cycling, soil structure maintenance, carbon transformation, and the regulation of pests and diseases. These are functions that are critical for farmers. This is exactly what they do every day as farmers. So those little things in the ground are helping them do what they're doing as growers. This study found that 70.5% of the tested parameters showed negative effect versus 1.4 and 28.1 of tested parameters showed positive or no significant effect from pesticide exposure respectively. It's a little complicated way to say that most of what they looked into showed that pesticide had a negative effect on those soil organisms. Sorry. And so at the end, our review indicates that pesticides of all types pose a clear hazard to soil invertebrates. So yes, there are definite impacts on their environment. They're more and more well documented. The science takes a long time to estimate these impacts. Doing research on a landscape scale is really complicated. It takes a lot of time, a lot of people, a lot of money, and that has to be funded in a way. Which is why sometimes we don't know exactly everything. So this study here says that we provide evidence that wild bees and butterfly genera may face exposure to a wide range of insecticide, fungicide, and herbicide despite being collected from areas managed for conservation. So we're thinking about CRP land, grassland, native grassland. They collect specimens from those areas, and they still find a lot of chemicals in them. So even those pollinators who live in those natural habitats are exposed to agriculture products. So therefore, even with the presence of extensive habitat, minimal agriculture activity on conservation areas may expose pollinators to a range of pesticides. And that's where the science doesn't go as far as we would want it to go. We know that they're exposed. We take their bodies and we see the compounds in their bodies. But the answer to what is it doing to them? Is it killing them? Is it making them, have trouble breathing, have organ failures, or so on? So sometimes we don't know exactly what it does. We know it's there, though. We know it's everywhere, and it's in those insects. But again, really stay in touch with what's actually proven to be true or false. And that was kind of my point here is we know it's everywhere, we don't know exactly what it does at this point. What about on our health? Here I'm going to talk about a product that everyone knows by name that's called glyphosate. A lot of people are going after it because it's known by name, because homeowners use it a lot. It doesn't mean that it's the worst product in the world, it's just that it's the most widely used, so it's the most widely studied. If we don't look into something, we won't find anything. But a lot of people have been looking into glyphosate for a number of years. And so this is something that was published by the Detox Project that's called The Poison in Our Daily Bread. And it says that dozens of independent studies published in peer-reviewed journals have found that glyphosate can have multiple negative health impacts, including harm to beneficial gut bacteria, birth defects, infertility, reproductive issues such as miscarriages, short pregnancies, increased infant mortality, and certain cancers. That's not the fun part of the job to display these things on screen, but I think it's good that we're all aware of that. One thing that I want to point out here is you see all the numbers, 40, 41, 42. Those are all references. Those are all scientific papers. This is not that's what I look for when I read an article that makes a claim about anything. Is there any reference? What is the reference? Is it something that's published, peer-reviewed literature? I think it's really important if we want to have these conversations with farmers or with other people in the community to make sure we know that what we're talking about is actually true. I'm going to give it to Nathanael now. Thank you.
So, Nathanael, I'm going to quickly pass these out. So, if anyone has any questions. Maybe raise your hand if you'd like a card. Yeah, that.
Okay. So one more time, my name's Nathanael. I'm coming from the crazy state of California, but I'll try to make it relevant here. But actually, most of the slides on here are from Michigan and Wisconsin. So thank you, Leah, for putting me up with some good slides. So orchard systems are unique in agriculture because they last a long time. It's not something that you can make quick changes to like you would with an annual crop. And that's kind of nice from my perspective as someone who does organic consulting, because we're always thinking long-term anyway. Like I mentioned, the 5 years is what we expect for a transition of an annual cropping system to move into an organic system. So the way that I think of this is conventional is a system in and of itself. It's highly complex, it takes a lot of moving parts, and you have to spend your whole life figuring out how to farm conventionally. The same thing for organic. It's a system that's very distinct from conventional system, and you basically have to set that system up as such in order to operate. Some of the things that we're all trying to address, conventional or organic, are pest control, weed control, the fertility. Also in the West Coast, and here too, but in the West Coast, we're especially concerned about water. So the water system, as a system in and of itself, can be it can be the be all and end all. I mean, we can't do any farming without any water, and that is the case for a lot of farmers. We just don't have water. But it's also important out here. And like I said, a conventional system addresses all of those problems very differently than an organic system would. So it's not easy always to bridge the gap between those. And the solutions, the overall solutions from an organic perspective, and I'll kind of hit on this a few times, is one, that nature is resilient. Nature takes care of herself and figures out how to make the system work. And two, that humans are creative and we're passionate. And that's kind of where the community comes in, and that's also where the scientists come in. So that's the big picture. Like I said, I'll keep on kind of coming back to those points. So I'm going to go over a few case studies. The first one is a farmer, one of Leia's friends, Kyle, out of Michigan. So I'm going to play this video here. See if I can make it work. No? Make it work, Leia. Okay. So this is Kyle mowing in his orchard. There's a few things that I'm going to take this off here. There's a few things that I want to point out here. The first is that he has this lush understory, and this is, like I said, the unique thing about one of the many unique things about orchards and perennial systems is that we're basically farming multiple crops. You're taking care of these permanent crops that are up tall, and you're also taking care of the orchard floor itself. So that allows us to have almost inherently a more complex, more diverse environment, which is good, whether you're a conventional system or an organic one. But there's there's a lot of problems that farmers face, a lot of challenges. And the problem I'm going to talk about quickly is one that Leia just told me about yesterday, so it's kind of off the cuff here. In apple orchards, they have to do a lot of thinning, a lot of pruning of the trees. And in a conventional system, that pruning would be done with chemicals. You'd spray a chemical on the tree, and the hormones would cause the buds to form in certain places and not in others. In an organic system, you can't spray these chemicals on there, so you have to do it manually. So as you can imagine, it's a lot more labor. Now, the further kind of exacerbate that problem is this is a conventional orchard that's been pruned using chemicals, and he wants to transition it to organic. So now the base structure, the initial scaffolding of the tree itself is not compatible with organic, so he has to come in and do a whole bunch more work. And the numbers that I was given from reputable sources that the cost of chemical pruning would be about $800 per acre, which is still expensive, but the cost of manually pruning this orchard is $6,000 per acre. So as you can imagine, that's a preventative barrier to moving towards organic. This is not unusual. This is kind of how it works in agriculture. There's, you get stuck on one side of the equation and the other, and you're kind of stuck with your system. It's kind of this treadmill of sorts, whether it be equipment related or cropping system related or cultural. It could be any number of things. So the solution that he's going to have to make a decision about is, does he send a crew through and do some really hard pruning year one, and probably some secondary pruning on year two, and then kind of hope that he can run with that system on year 3 and forward, or does he just tear the whole thing out and start again, which, as you can imagine, is also expensive. I don't have any solutions for this reason. So a lot, and this is true a lot of times as organic consultants, we're coming in and we're helping people make decisions, but we don't have, we don't have a gun loaded with silver bullets. We don't have a gun, period. So we're really just coming in and helping people where they're at and to address the solutions as they can come to them. So probably, if there was a solution here, it would probably be that the farmer just does a kind of a piecemeal transition to acreage over in portions. Okay. Yeah. Next slide, please. Oops, I wasn't supposed to do that first. It's okay. We'll leave it up there. No, that's the right one. I just was too early in moving to the next slide. I was too excited. So the next So the next problem, the farm that we visited 2 days ago, also an apple orchard, different set of problems. So one of the main things on orchards that we're dealing with, since we're not tilling our land, and thus we're not eliminating things like squirrels, which love to eat apples, they love to eat almonds back where I'm from, I'm sure would eat a cherry if they had the opportunity to, is that you've got a lot of squirrels, you've got a lot of gophers, voles are a big problem in orchards. So the conventional approach is to poison them. And poison works, right? Poison, I'm going to get into, Leia's already talked about pesticides and biocides, and I'm going to get into them a little bit more too. But we know that, if we're dropping poison in the hole, every farmer and every landowner knows that there's some collateral damage to that, right? There's raptors that are going to be scavenging on the dead squirrels, or maybe still alive. There could be family dogs. In fact, I've had dogs, our own dogs die on orchards from the same thing. Foxes, minks, bobcats. These are all things that are good for a farm, and we don't want to impact those, but we know that they're going to be negatively impacted by poisons. So, how do you get rid of squirrels on a farm without poison? There they are, right there. The rat terriers. Yeah, these. Trusty assistants. So, if you had some dogs like this on your farm, you would have fewer gophers and ground squirrels, guaranteed. Same thing with cats. So there's solutions that we know, and any home gardener knows this to be true. That animals like this, they're bred. They're called a rat terrier for a reason. Right? Cats are happy to hunt all night, all day, and so it's more like, how do we set up a system to accommodate them? And I'm not necessarily recommending this as a solution, but it was a solution on the farm that we visited. Now this incurs another layer of problems, as everything is. It's all complex, whether it's on the organic side or whether you're on the conventional side. There's always, every solution has its own problem. So the problem is these little guys are also kind of a yummy little bite for a coyote, right? So now how do we solve the coyotes? Which is the next slide. Leia and her bear. So this is a livestock guardian dog. They get along great with the little terriers. I wish we had a video of that. It was adorable. The terriers would bite onto the livestock guardian dog's tail. The livestock guardian dog would spin around in circles, and there was this airborne terrier. So these are a common solution in a lot of animal integration systems. They're usually used for guarding sheep or goats or something smaller like that, but they'll also guard other smaller dogs if the smaller dogs are the ones that are doing the kind of the primary work. So we deal with a lot of livestock guarding dogs out where we're at, specifically in California, because sheep are a really important part of our context, and there's a lot of coyotes out there, and there's also a fair amount of mountain lions, and now we have wolves as well. And these guys are totally happy to protect the flock from anything. There's nothing that will be a problem for this dog here. Okay, so that was an easy one. So that case study that actually did have a solution. This is a working solution that she's come up with. The last case studies, I'm going to get into a lot more detail on this one. And this one's going to be a case study from my own farm, from my own experience. And it's very analogous to one here. It's actually getting to see Jim's farm yesterday and see the Seaquist Orchard. It reminded me a lot of my own operations, a lot of California operations. And specifically, what we were doing was one specific pest. And this is common across agriculture. So we'll get some invasive pest that we don't know how to deal with. We haven't figured it out. The nature hasn't figured out how to deal with it herself. So our pest out west was navel orangeworm. It still is navel orangeworm. But when I got back into farming, this was probably 10 years ago, 15 years ago, I was working, my wife and I were working on my in-laws' land, and I said, I want to convert this almond orchard over to organic. I said, no, you can't do it because of navel orangeworm. There's no organic solution for navel orangeworm. So the conventional method for addressing the aphid worm was malathion, which is an organophosphate, which is, I'm going to quickly digress into kind of what that means. So basically in the 1930s, there was a German scientist named Gerhard Schrader. Have you heard of Gerhard Schrader? Not retelling the story. Who was trying to figure out better insecticides to feed people. And he figured out that organophosphates were a powerful insecticide. Unfortunately, he during World War II, he was kind of conscripted into the Nazi scientific brigade and developed that as a nerve agent. It's a powerful nerve agent. So most chemicals that work on insects also impact humans as well. Specifically, organophosphate works. I don't know if you guys want. I'll go really quickly at this part, but it directly impacts a piece of our biochemical chain that where our brain is communicating with our muscles. So it stops the chemical pathway of our brain communicating with our muscles. And that's bad, obviously, but as it builds up, since it's not being used in its proper pathway, it builds up and becomes a toxin in our systems. So I'm just going to read this part here because I wouldn't be able to remember it anyway. Repeated exposure includes impaired memory, concentration, nightmares or insomnia, disorientation, severe depression, personality change, diarrhea, nausea, vomiting, speech difficulties, delayed reaction times. Severe symptoms could be seizures, slow pulse, difficulty breathing, coma. There's also the United Nations International Agency on Research on Cancer lists malathion and diazinon as probably carcinogenic. So, as you can imagine, this is why farmers are really, really careful with pesticides, because it directly affects their own selves, their workers, and their children. So, what's the organic solution for that? Initially, like I said, there really wasn't a solution. But as science has figured out some better methods, we now have two more tools in our toolbox. Can you go to the next picture? Is there one before this? Yeah, that one. Oh, was that one the whole time? Okay, so now we have some more tools. So this is my daughter. She's spraying, well actually, there's a few things I wanted to show you guys in this picture. So this is an orchard. This is the same orchard that I was talking to my father-in-law about. And in California, this is an almond orchard. In California almond orchard, almonds are harvested off the ground. So the ground has to be absolutely bare. So that in between the trees, we usually mow, or people spray a lot too, but mowing is a normal way to take care of the vegetation in between trees. But right on the berm here, right where kind of the tree line next to where she's standing at, that area is sprayed. It always has to be sprayed in a conventional context because the mower doesn't go up onto the berms very easily. It's just hard to mow that area. So this is after 2 years of us taking over the orchard. It's been 2 years of organic management. So those berms haven't been sprayed for 2 years. As you can see, there's still residual effect of the herbicides that were there. So she's spraying not a pesticide. She's spraying on a foliar application of compost tea. I don't think it's going to do anything to help us. I think it makes all of us feel better to spray something. We don't want to give our kids something when they're feeling sick, right? But The only way to find out is to scientifically test this. So this orchard, our entire orchard now is a test site. We're working with the University of California, Davis, and there's a few nonprofits that we're working with. And Rhodale, through my own work, is we're trying to figure out how to communicate the results that we find here to our local community. So part of it is, in some sections, we're spraying on this foliar spray, this compost tea. So that's kind of the scientific part of that orchard. We can go to the next slide. Nature herself also takes care of a lot of problems. Once we move into the system, it's not fast. It's not something, nature doesn't just snap her fingers and fix everything. But now, a year later, so this is year 3 into it, now you can see there's a lot more growing on there. A lot of weeds granted here, but this zone right along the tree area here is now fertile. There's things that can grow there. So how can we actually support nature to move this process forward a little bit faster? You get the next one. Animal integration is a really fun part of what I get to do. Animals used to be in orchards. This was a normal way of keeping the orchard floor clean. It also adds income to farmer streams, so I can lease out my land to a local Basque shepherd. They bring in the sheep, they clean off the orchard floor. I don't have to pay for mowing. I don't have to pay for suckering, which is when the trees send out little shoots out of the side. They do a little bit of pruning for me, not much, but that's okay too. I don't want to do too much pruning. And then the animals are also adding fertility to the ground also as they're kind of moving through the orchard. So they kind of give nature a little bit of a boost as they're processing the vegetation a little bit faster than normally we process. So those are kind of the natural systems there, and like I said, there's some scientific aspect. But all of these in and of themselves don't solve a naval organ problem. So fortunately, scientists have been working on other methods as well, and one of the main very recent additions to our toolbox on the conventional and the organic side is pheromone mating disruption. So small pheromone traps or releasers are placed around the orchard, and the chemicals in those either confuse or trap the moths as they're flying around. So that's the second part of it. And nature is resilient, but humans are also creative and passionate. So scientists are really and truly passionate about figuring out these problems, and they're smart enough, especially when we work together, that we can figure out some of those. So I'm excited that Becky's here. I'm excited that Rodale's here. All of us bring, that's what we bring to the table. We bring science, we bring strong research backgrounds, not ourselves necessarily, but our extended networks of researchers, of extension agents, and just kind of even citizen scientists to a certain extent. So, and we're excited to be working, particularly here where there's so much community support, so many smart people, and there's such a really unique opportunity. And last but not least, why are we doing this? Kids and cats. Kids and cats. So obviously, all of us as farmers, our children grow up on the land where we're at, and that's the bottom line. We want it to be a better place for them. We want it to be a better place for animals. We want them to grow up in a place that's not just safe, but where they can thrive and where future generations can make a living and thrive as well. Thank you. Questions? Oh, we already have questions.
Well, and then there's also one that came in on
Okay.
online, so whenever you're done.
Okay. So Nathanael. Yeah. No. Are nematodes or other natural predators like ladybugs or mantis allowed in organic farming or gardening?
Yeah, great question. So yeah, there's a lot of nuance to kind of presentation that I just gave. I talked about pheromone traps, but natural predators, beneficial insects, are important in any system, but they're especially important in an organic system where we're not applying a broad spectrum pesticide. So the reason it's important to not apply pesticides for human health, or minimize those as much as possible for human health, but also a broad spectrum pesticide will reduce your predatory insect capacity, the capacity of insects or other invertebrates to prey on species. It only takes a few of them. So our problem is mites in California. A predatory mite, can eat 20 or 100 of our pest mites in a few hours, and so that's a lot of strength. That's a lot of strength in a small number. And if we spray something on there, we can wipe out that small number. It's going to take them a long time to build back up. They might not build back up at all in that season. So nematodes, ladybugs, praying mantis are all definitely allowed in natural systems. They're allowed in organic, and we try to figure out ways that we can better understand the life cycle of the pest and the predator, and the better we can support those. So cover crops are a great way of supporting beneficial insects. Hedgerows are great ways of supporting beneficial insects. Okay.
Repeat the question.
Okay, I've asked Door County to formally ban glyphosate. No response yet. Door is getting serious guarantees of industrial ag quantities of industrial ag waste from cattle dairy operations. Suggestions, please. This is as everything that we deal with. Because I'm not going to supply a perfect answer. These are complicated issues where there's a lot of moving parts, and a lot of the times natural systems and human systems are irreducibly complex. That's not to say that we can't figure it out, but it really takes a group of smart people working together to figure these questions out. So that's my input. Later, so
Yeah, I don't think I have any better answer into. I think maybe the core of the question is how do I have an impact on that? I guess. How do I help foster that change? I don't know who asked the question, but yeah, I mean, make calls. Call your local representative, advocate for what you want. I mean, there is no silver bullet in solving community issues like that. There is a question here. I don't know exactly. There is a word I cannot read, but I think it touches on hydroponic. And is hydroponic allowed in organic? Did you ask? Yeah. And I can't read the first word of your second.
How does hydroponics relate to organic?
Okay. So hydroponic is allowed in organic, and this has been allowed for 2 or 3 years now. It was highly debated. So the way the National Organic Program is ruled, there is a board that's called the National Organic Standards Board that gets together and makes recommendation about what the organic rules should be. But their recommendations do not necessarily have to be turned into rule. So it's kind of a bizarre system where there's a body of people who are really heavily involved and very informed in the organic sector who get together and make recommendations. And hydroponic was one of their decisions to make a couple of years ago, and they ended up deciding to include hydroponic and organic. And I think that's kind of what started the regenerative organic label. And there is also a label that's another add-on to organic, and it's the Real Organic Project. And I think those two group of people were not happy with the fact that hydroponic was part of organic at this point, because of course there's no soil. So organic is all about building soil and regenerating the soil and so on, and there is no soil, so how do we deal with that? And I think a lot of people have a lot of opinions about it. We try to work with hydroponic people if they ask us, but I think it's safe to say that Rhodell is not really thrilled about the fact that hydroponic made it into organic. Now there is nothing we can do about it, and we just have to work with people who want to do it. I think it serves a purpose. If you think about highly populated places, large cities, yes, maybe having a local food source that's still grown organically, hydroponically, it does make sense. Putting concrete all over a pasture field to start a hydroponic facility, that doesn't make a lot of sense. So yeah, we have to kind of see both aspects of it. And I think I haven't seen that kind of operation, right? Pouring concrete on a pasture to turn it into a hydroponic situation, I haven't really seen that. It's mostly happening in the cities.
Let's divide these and just as a note too, there's definitely like Leah and I and the whole rest of our team have debates about this sort of thing all the time. There's not a consensus within organic or even amongst the two of us. So I won't go into GMOs. Okay. All right.
You're not allowed organic.
Specific to Door County, when we have very high humidity, which feeds fungus. What specific methods are available to our own local orchards to prevent fungus? So this is a great question that I have absolutely no answer to. And my first thing I would do if someone asked me that question is I'd probably talk to Becky. I'd say, hey, Becky, do you have any ideas about this? And she might not either. I ain't putting her on the spot, but this is really an all hands on deck question. Things like this right here in California. There's probably people who apply a lot of sulfur. Biodiversity is kind of the one thing I pull out of my pocket to begin with. But honestly, I would be contacting experts about this because if there's not an obvious answer out there, we probably don't know it either. Next one. Do pheromone traps have a negative impact on bees in almond orchards? At this point, the pheromones themselves are not known to be broad spectrum. They're usually very, very narrow chemicals that only attract one specific species. So, but as with everything, there's a lot of complex and compounding issues. The release mechanism on some of the pheromone traps includes some of the volatile compounds that can be problematic for a wide range of species. I don't have very specific. I don't have any more specific information than that. But this is a very typical question that I would get in California, and it's probably something that I should be researching. And that's fortunately, Leigh and I, our whole team have the opportunity to work with, like I've said a few times before, work with scientists across the board and our own scientists, which is really exciting as well. A lot of the information that Leah talked about is scientists that Rhodale comes up with. We have tons of, I think, 20 or more professional researchers within Rhodale, most of them based in Pennsylvania, but a few now throughout the U.S. And they're just incredibly smart, and we're able to communicate and act as a conduit between our research teams and the public and farmers. So farmers have specific questions, like this one right here, and I don't have the answer. No one seems to have the answer. I can actually pass this on to a Rhodale researcher and say, okay, let's write a grant for it. Let's see if we can do some research on it.
So one question that came in via Zoom, I'll have to just repeat it. Does the organic farmer actually see the increased sale price of their crop to consumers, or is it something that the middle person benefits from? So do they actually get the funds for the increased price?
Okay, so the question, you want to take this question? Thanks. So the question was, who sees the increased cost of organics? Consumers are going to pay more for organic. Does the farmer get that? Does some middleman get that? Where does that cost go? I am going to make you answer this kind of from a Midwest perspective, but from my own perspective, most of our fields, I don't think this is uncommon for specialty crops, and specialty crops are basically everything that I've been talking about and everything that's in the context here, but it's not the stuff that Leah is talking about. Specialty crops are unique in that if we are certified organic, a lot of times we can't charge more than what we're already charging. In the case of Jim's cherries here, I mean, if you're someone who's buying Jim's cherries, what other, tart cherry options do you have? If you're coming to the farmer's market and you're buying my almonds, what other almonds, local sources of almonds do you have? A lot of times we can almost think of us as kind of monopolizing our market. The bad part of that is that we don't have room to go up. I mean, the good thing is that people come to us because they trust us, because they know us, they want to support local. Those are all good, but we can't add on a fee necessarily for charging organic. That said, there's a lot of room for kind of telling our story, and people certainly would want to support it if we did have some practices that we wanted to implement. I say, I'd like to bring sheep into my orchard, but it's too expensive. Our customers would probably respond to that, which is nice. That's not true of any of the grains that Leia works with, though.
Yeah, I can touch on the commodity crops because that's what we grow a lot of. What I mean by commodity crops is corn and soybeans, which actually go to feed cattle that doesn't live here by any stretch of the imagination. And that's actually pretty rewarding in general for farmers. So one thing with the organic prices to the grower is that those prices tend to be much more stable than conventional prices. So conventional prices are indexed on the Chicago Board of Trade. So they change every day. When it opens, there is one thing. When it closes, it's another price. Organic prices, it's more of a supply and demand game. So they're very stable. As long as people keep buying organic products, then there is still a good demand. So the prices are pretty good. And I was just checking because I don't know the conventional prices, but I know that soybeans are really expensive in organic right now. They're about $30 a bushel, and they're $15 a bushel in conventional. So the organic growers gets twice the price of the conventional growers, and that's in their pocket. That doesn't go to the industry. The corn is a little different. It's like $7 for conventional, $9 for organic, but they were still like a $2 per bushel. Corn yields 150 to 200 bushel per acre, so you can imagine that it's still a pretty good amount of money that goes into organic farmer's pocket. That's higher. So yes, in commodity crop, it is worth it to transition to organic. I think in specialty crop, yes, all the dynamics you described are more like small scale and local scale. But yeah, again, commodity crops, definitely worth it. So if you have corn and soybean growers in your area, I'm happy to talk to them. I've seen someone ask a question like this on the card. Just give us a call. Our numbers, emails, we have cards there. So if you know someone, your neighbor, or you're renting land to someone and you want them to transition to organic, just give me a call. What first move can our local community / farmer implement to traditional fields to add diversity? So I see my heart wants to say cover crop, but my brain tells me that cover crop, the issue was the crops that were growing here, corn and soybeans. Again, those are very long season crops, and our season here is not long at all. So there's no time left when you harvest corn and soybeans to actually plant cover crop, which is very unfortunate, and I wish our climate was a little different, but that also brings a whole other set of issues if the climate is different. I think adding diversity within the system, thinking about the field edges, there are a lot of programs that will fund planting field edges to native plants, and I think that's probably your best bet in adding diversity to the landscape here, and also encouraging farmers to have diverse crop rotation, which can be complicated because finding markets for crops that are not corn and soybean is not easy. The market can be available, I don't know, in Montana or something like this, but not necessarily in Door County, Wisconsin. So supporting growers, I'm thinking grain growers because those are the ones I work with, in diversifying their crop rotation, which diversifies plant species at the landscape scale, is supporting local food and local diversified food. So for example, close to Madison, a young farmer opened just a grain mill, and they're growing a whole lot of different grains, which is actually turns into pretty pricey flour. And if the consumers are willing to buy it and to support it, he stays in business. If farmers don't want to buy it, and if consumers just want to go and buy the cheapest flour, it's just not going to work out. And we have to understand the added cost of transforming on the farm, marketing your own product, this will add up to the cost, and that's why for us as consumers, it's a higher price tag. And I think that's how you support diversity on the farm, is by supporting your local food system. But again, field edges, I think, is the easiest way to go.
Orchards are notoriously difficult to transition from conventional to organic. How old can an apple orchard be to start a reasonable transition in terms of costs? So I've seen, it's actually an interesting thing with apple orchards, that probably any fruit orchards across the board, but especially apples, since they can live so long. Some of the older orchards were actually planted before chemical pruning, before chemical agriculture at all. So if you have an orchard that's, say, older than 50 or 60 years old, you could potentially return it to its organic state. In other words, my grandparents weren't farming, they were farming organically, even though they didn't know it at the time, just because they didn't have chemicals in their toolbox. So it depends on the age of the orchard, and with respect to that specific question. And it also probably depends on the size of the orchard, and Jim's not going to go out there and prune thousands of trees, but if you only have half a dozen trees in your orchard, or a few dozen trees, you can really work more on those specific, opening up the canopy, creating a system that needs less pesticides in general. Another one? You want me to? Okay. The Peninsular Agricultural Resource Station, UW, is growing apples that don't need pesticides. I understand there are cherry trees now that are resistant to fungi. What can you tell me about these? So, yes, please.
Becky, we will have to talk into the microphone, sorry, so Zoom people.
And you can introduce yourself.
Okay. Yeah.
Hi, I'm Becky, and I'm the superintendent of the Peninsular Ag Research Station. And I'm wondering if maybe that's like a miswording, but we aren't growing any apples that don't need any chemicals. That's not something that we grow. We have some apples that are growing organically, and we have some apples that you could maybe argue are low input, because we're selling them as juice apples, so quality is less important. But we don't have anything on the stage right now that is pesticide-free completely.
Thank you. Clarification. So an important thing that researchers do is to work on genetics, obviously, and that's a much slower process than for trees than it is for wheat or for vegetables, or any annual crop. So and that is kind of the solution, is if we can get a variety that is resistant to a pest, then the problem is solved. We don't need any pesticides. We don't need any. Problem solved for everyone, conventional or organic alike, and that does happen. That's what researchers are doing, is trying to figure out what kind of genetics can we facilitate that will really create a plant that's resistant to these problems. That also, though, leads into the next one, the last one, and it's all you, is can you talk about the conventional and organic growing and climate change? So there's a lot of stressors and problems that farmers are dealing with on a day-to-day basis. Out in California, our climate is rapidly becoming non-viable for lots and lots of crops. And this goes back to the where does science come in? There's a lot of ways that Mother Nature takes care of herself and creates resilient systems. And as researchers, we can be actually figuring out what type of trees can we grow, what kind of almond trees can we grow in California that are drought resistant? What kind of almond trees can we grow that work more closely, have a more natural symbiotic relationship with soil biology, so that they're taking care of some of their own, the tree's own health needs, some of their nutritional needs, as well as their system health needs in a more natural way. We can also, look at nutrient density of trees. So, for a long time, it's all been about yield. That's the only thing that mattered in conventional agriculture is how much are you producing. And now we know that, it's not so much, it's not how much we eat, it's about the quality of food that we eat. It's not just about getting people calories, it's about getting them nutrients that their bodies need. Back to climate change, things are moving quickly right now, but scientists are also working hard on these things too, and nature herself is doing a lot of, we're learning a lot about how nature, especially in soil science, is a quickly evolving field, and we're learning more and more about how microbiology is impacting the health of plants and thus our own health.
Okay, so I have a snowman here. Everyone who drew a snowman? Ahsoka? Can I use no-till to plant wheat over alfalfa? No. Maybe. If you graze it down or mow it down, really down to the ground, and you have a good drill where you can plant it, depending on what you really want to do with the wheat, if it's just for forage, then perhaps you can do it. If it's wheat for grain and you need it to have like a decent yield, I would definitely not recommend that. And I think it kind of brings up a topic that's a topic of discussion between the organic and the conventional community. So it kind of is, the organic growers are pointing out the conventional growers, you're putting pesticides in your field, and then the conventional growers tell them back, well, you're tilling your fields like nobody's business. So I think that's a crazy conversation that I won't get into now, and I think it kind of touches on that. So in conventional system, alfalfa will be sprayed. In an organic system, alfalfa will be tilled. And some people believe that tillage is the worst thing you can do to the ground. I don't believe that. I think there are ways to do tillage that are good and ways to do tillage that are bad. But that's a whole other 2-hour presentation that I won't get into today. But to answer that question, I would not no-till wheat over alfalfa, especially if you're really looking for normal yielding crop. If it's just for forage, I would recommend you can try and graze it or mow it down to the ground and use a heavy drill, no-till drill, to plant it into it. Do your own trial. I think it's really what we recommend a lot of the time. And someone asked to revisit the slide about the transition process, and I'm not sure what slide it was, and what questions were. Who asked the question? What do you want to know?
You just kind of skip through it, and I think for people viewing online,
Yeah.
and it's gonna, this is recorded and will be viewed later. That was it. So I took off the screen share so that people online can see. So you're not currently sharing your screen. Okay.
Which one? Was it this one?
The one with green squares.
The green squares?
Right there.
Oh, that's not about transition. That's really like the result of that long-term cropping system trial that we have.
Like why? Yeah.
So
That's the one.
what's the question?
You kind of skipped through some of it. I didn't know.
Oh, okay.
A few minutes to just give a few more.
Yeah, so I think I touched on a bunch of them. I didn't touch on the earn 3 to 6 times greater profits for farmers. So again, that's kind of the price that we were talking about. This is again a system that has corn, soybean, wheat. So those commodity crops tend to be really, like the price tag is higher in organic all of the time. Wheat maybe not so much, but corn and soybeans, yes, it's been like that forever, and I don't think it will change. Sometimes corn in conventional and organic gets close, but never really touches. Release 40% fewer carbon emission. Honestly, I would be lying to say that I can explain this one. And I think you should just go online and look. This is called the farming system trial. If you go on our website, you can see all the results. And again, look out for the latest release, the 40-year anniversary report that hopefully will be released soon because I'm really excited to see it. And if you keep an eye for it, then you will see more information on that. Organic leach no toxic chemicals into waterways. I think the explanation for this one is pretty straightforward. Yeah, what we've already said before. Was it?
And everyone's welcome to join us after. We've got some refreshments if you have more pointed questions. Yeah.
Except for the people online. No snacks for Zoom. How is nutrition studied in conventional versus organic? My understanding of this question is it's the same. We're recommending foliar tests, in which case a technician will come take some pieces of leaves.
Is it nutrition, human nutrition or plant nutrition?
I wasn't talking about-
What is yours?
I'll talk about both. Humans, plants, and soil, right? So nutrition, our understanding of nutrition is now much deeper than it was before. 20 years ago, certainly 50 and 100 years ago, we thought that nutrition could just be in supplements, right? You add these things to your flour, and now it's an enriched AP flour. Now we know that nutrition really starts in the dirt. It starts with the relationship of soil biology to each other and soil biology to the plant. And if the plant is healthy, then we're going to get healthy food from that plant, and that's going to impact our human health dramatically. So how nutrition is studied used to be that you just would give some people some supplements or food or whatever, and you see what happened to them, I guess. But now there's much more robust testing going on. So we have trials in California, and I know there's a lot in Pennsylvania too, and maybe you can speak to that, so I'm not as familiar with them. But in California, we have some trials where we work directly with the hospitals. We give them food that we grew on our farms, and they're giving that as a, what do you call it when you go to the doctor and do your prescription? Sorry, they're prescribing food to people instead of medicines, and it's not just that some people get food and some people get medicine. That obviously that's not like that. There's ethical issues with that. But the way they do it is they were smart about it, is that some people get food up front, and then some people get food later in the study, and that way they're able to tell them what's the actual human health impact of these farming an organic system versus more of a non-organic system. Cover crops in the ground where you have more diversity above ground and below ground, and then you can actually go back, or maybe in advance, you can actually test the nutrient density of the foods themselves. And we're working with some researchers out of New York, I think. I'm not sure. I'm out of my depth to speak exactly to it, but there are a lot of labs that are testing actually, what specific compounds are in these foods, which we're still learning what all of them do.
Touch on the Rhodell, what we're doing. Again, our website will have more information than I do because we're not part of the research team, but I know that this is kind of the next area of focus in organic research is how much, what are the different nutrients that we find in organic versus conventional food. And, the first research was, can we actually grow organic and have decent yields and so on? And I think we've kind of proved that, yes, we can do that. And now we're really more focusing on the little details, nitty-gritty details of what are we growing, how much nutrients per acre are we growing actually. And so on the farming system trial, and we also have a vegetable system trial in Pennsylvania where they produce conventional and organic vegetable in different systems, and so they're studying the nutrient contents of those different crops, including grain and vegetables. So that data is available there. Again, on our website, there are webinars that have been recorded that were given by the research team. One of them I can remember recently was talking about oats and the different the nutrient panel of different oats grown in different systems, and it was actually really insightful. I don't remember the conclusion exactly, but really encourage looking into it. And yes, there is more and more research done on that topic, which is great.
thank everybody for coming, and we have some amazing cherry bars in the back brought from Seaquist, and we have coffee and a few other snacks, so stick around, mingle, ask questions. Nathanael and Leah will be around. Myself and John Heller are here with the village if you have any questions. Lots of marketing material with the Climate Change Coalition. We have some village events listed on a pamphlet here, and then the Rhodale table is in the back corner, so gobble up all the info. Becky's here too, if you have any questions for her, and have fun. Thank you so much for coming.